on Fox. Television is a circus, a carnival, a
This was Hollywood's vision of TV news gone mad.
It's amazing we've got great Americans coming up again. Thank God.
And this is reality. The new wave in television that's known as tabloid TV. Good evening, I'm Ted Koppel, and this is Nightline.
At the bar that night, she was sexually assaulted and...
Robert Chambers and the late Jennifer Levin shocked New York. And tonight, a shocking videotape.
Is it starting to go too far?
I'll be back in just a second to talk more to this dog.
Among our guests, Morton Downey Jr.
This is ABC News Nightline. Reporting from Washington, Ted Koppel.
If, in fact, anyone is still surprised, the only question is why. Stock car racing outdraws all the combined performances of opera and ballet in this country. More people watch any single Super Bowl than all the combined live audiences of Hamlet since the author died. That does not reflect adversely on the quality of Shakespeare, nor does it raise stock car racing to the level of classic entertainment. It does mean that the larger the audience you want to attract, the lower you reach. And if that maxim wasn't made for television, then what was? Our medium, after all, at this stage, in human development at least, is the ultimate in catering to the popular will. The question is whether the bad always succeeds in driving out the good. The answer, as Judd Rose reports, is not yet, but stay tuned.
Here he comes, so make way, please, for the people's choice.
He's outrageous. He's great. He's sexy.
He's not afraid to open his mouth. He's not afraid of anybody. He's great.
You waited, what, 2 months for tickets? Yeah, about that. Why? I wanted to see the Christians get fed to the lions.
He won't be disappointed. This, after all, is the Morton Downey Jr. Show, where conversation is a blood sport. Mort chats with a guest.
I'll stick to the issues, pal. If I had a slime like you in the White House, I'd puke on you.
Mort issues an invitation to the Ayatollah. Mort offers an opinion.
Murderers and drug pushers, I say, hang the creeps by their testicles.
He's rude, he's crude, and he's hot. Morton Downey Jr. is the most talked-about personality in the most controversial new trend in broadcasting. Some call it tabloid TV, some call it shock TV, some call it flat-out bad taste.
It's about shouting and screaming, and it's about cheapening and trivializing the public dialogue. And that is terrible. Something awful is happening.
Television is no longer a cool medium. It also must be a hot medium. It can't portray life just as we would like to see it on the Huxtable Family. It has to be life as it really is. It has to be emotions as they really are. And that's what we portray.
And it's true, television has discovered reality, or at least the dark side of reality. America's Most Wanted on the Fox network profiles criminals and vividly recreates their violent crimes. In 4 months on the air, it's become the most watched show on Fox TV, grabbing 11% of the national audience, better than some shows on the big 3 networks. One of those 3, NBC, plans a similar true crime show for this fall. A Current Affair, the Fox News magazine, now on in 69 cities, dishes up a daily diet of sensational crimes, sleazy scandals, and leering sex. Recently, it combined all 3 by showing a startling home video of New York's so-called preppy killer, Robert Chambers. The program also featured a lurid reenactment of his crime. It got A Current Affair its highest ratings ever. And talk shows are no longer just celebrity chat fests. These days, talk is cheap.
But I know that he's proud to be on my leash, and I'd like him to tell you that. Tell him, Joseph.
I do not feel...
That's a privilege.
I do not feel degraded.
How does it feel being a kept man, required to deliver sex not on your timetable, but on hers?
Later in the show, we are going to talk with a woman who insists that she has seen Elvis in her very own neighborhood at the Burger King.
You've been involved in a menage a trois.
Correct.
In college.
Right.
Paul, if you're not going to hell, nobody's going.
I never promised my mother I wouldn't embarrass the family once in a while.
And have you?
Sure. We're the show that brought male strippers to daytime television.
In fact, Phil Donahue is usually an oasis of thoughtful dialogue in a sea of sensationalism. More typical is Geraldo Rivera, whose talk show debuted last fall. Since then, these are just a few of the sordid subjects he's focused on.
The old rules of journalism are pretty much out the window. The rules of taste have long since been trampled under. The ethic is to grab an audience, get it, and get it to watch.
How do you get people to watch? How do you stand out among the hundreds of game shows and talk shows and network reruns that clutter the airwaves? The solution, television as voyeur. When the murder is reenacted, when the small-town scandal is exposed, when the sexual peccadillos are discussed, the message is simple. This could be you.
When we come back, Pretty Kim Hanlon, a naive young woman from Ohio, and how she got caught up in a deadly web of deceit.
That's typical for A Current Affair. A recent story meeting dealt with everything from a surgeon who makes porno videos to some neo-Nazi rock singers.
But I was thinking that this is better than your average neo-Nazi story because it also involves music and some visuals.
When music and visuals come before content and ideas, you're grasping the philosophy of tabloid TV.
If it's boring, it's probably not news. If it's sensational, it's probably not boring.
I think what we're seeing now is the blueprint for a new kind of value-free, content-free, high-impact programming that calls itself news but is really something else.
Whatever it is, it's working. The Morton Downey Show went into national syndication this month and is now seen in 43 cities. In some, it's already doubled and quadrupled the ratings. In Boston, for example, station viewership is up 71%. For Downey himself, being a bully means big bucks.
A year ago, I was appearing at muffler shops for $160 a day.
Now?
I get 25 grand.
Mort may be happy, but some say he's sending out a sad message.
That ideas don't matter. Civility doesn't matter. What matters is intimidation and bullying and getting the goods on the other guy. And I find this very distasteful.
Like it or not, more tabloid TV is on the way. This fall, there's Group 1 Medical, real sick people getting diagnosed on TV by real doctors. Geraldo Rivera will return to network TV in an NBC special. And soon...
Finish your sentence.
That's right, Gordon Liddy, the talk show.
You'll be seeing Gordon Liddy. And if you can't handle it, take 2 aspirin and call your doctor in the morning.
If these programs are no good, they will fall of their own weight. You'd be surprised at what the American people won't watch. And if they won't watch, you can't make them.
For now, at least, we are watching. We have seen the future, and it shouts. Judd Rose for Nightline in New York.
And Morton Downey Jr. will be back in just a second, joining us live when we come back, along with TV critic for the Baltimore Sun, Bill Carter, who has been highly critical of Mr. Downey's brand of television.
This is ABC News Nightline, brought to you by AT&T.
Downey Jr.'s current television show has only been on the air since last October, and as Judd Rose told us, has recently gone into syndication. In that time, he has managed to make quite a name for himself. Mr. Downey joins us now in our New York studios. Bill Carter has been television critic for the Baltimore Sun for the past 10 years. He is with us in our Washington bureau. Mort, I must tell you, you've made at least half a dozen converts in our control room. They thought that was wonderful, and wonderful because it's clearly entertaining as hell. Beyond that, what is it?
Beyond that, it's the example of frustration that I think the American people feel, Ted, at not really being able to express themselves for fear of losing their jobs, being thrown out of their homes, having their wives leave them, or maybe getting thrown out of school.
So, in a sense, it provides a certain psychological relief.
I think it's a pressure valve release, yes, absolutely.
You know what struck me at the beginning of the program, when we intercut that segment from Patty Chayefsky's network, and then you coming on, God, you really do sound just like him. You even look a little bit like him. Did you pattern yourself after him?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, that was one of my favorite movies. And at the time of the movie, I guess that's 10 or 11 years ago, I never imagined I'd be doing this type of television show. I was in politics in those days.
Now, what is it that you hope to accomplish, though? You've told me why you think people watch. What are you after?
I'm after establishing a platform for the American who has been unheard by his government, for the American who has been unheard by his employer, even by his union. He now has a platform where he can express himself. He doesn't have to wear the cosmetics of television, the politenesses and the niceties. He can let it hang out.
So yours, in your perception at least, is the People's Forum?
It's a People's Forum, and I'm an advocate rather than a host.
Okay, Bill Carter, there's nothing wrong with having a People's Forum. People need a forum, too, don't they?
Sure they do. It's interesting that Mr. Downey says he created this forum for them to be heard because most of the time you can't hear them over him shouting them down. No, I don't want to come at this as a moral judge or something. I come at this as a critic. I mean, I personally feel like it's bad because it's bad television. I don't want to say that.
Well, wait a second. Hold it. Now, bad television.
Bad television from a critic's point of view. From a critic's point of view.
You're talking qualitatively, because God knows everybody's going to start watching it. It's certainly entertaining television. We were all sitting here chuckling like crazy, right?
Absolutely. I agree with that, and I think most people who watch it like a rubbernecker watch a traffic accident. I don't think there are people who watch it as consistently because they're trying to be informed, for example, as you would watch another show based on reality, let's say. I think they're looking at it from the point of view of, because there's a shock value involved.
Let me ask you a tougher question. Is Morton Downey's program, for example, going to knock off Wheel of Fortune, or is it going to knock off Nightline?
Well, it's going to play against Nightline. Clearly, it's playing against Nightline right now all over the country.
And I must add, beating it in some places.
Yeah, but it's beating in those places where it's been on for a relatively short amount of time. I think if you track it, you'll see that it usually doesn't sustain its audience for that long because I think the act plays out, and I do think there is a theatricality to it like an act, and once you get accustomed to it, I think it becomes boring because you see the same thing over and over again. Again, that's my critical opinion. I think, I'm not making that judgment as to his political beliefs or any of the things he says on this show, but I do think it has a short-term value because like any other shock value thing, it wears off.
All right, Mort?
Well, Mr. Carter obviously is entitled to his opinion. My opinion would be simply that, yes, there is information that comes out of my show. I don't think you can just watch one show and see the multifaceted personality of a Downey or a Koppel or anyone else. You have to see many shows. By the same token, Mr. Carter, we all know that every football game is basically played the same. Nevertheless, it has lasted for many years, and people keep going to those football games.
Yeah, let me come back to my question, though, and let me pose the question to you, Mort. Who's your competition? Am I your competition, or is Vanna White your competition?
Well, no, realistically, I don't think, at this point, I don't think I have competition. I rely on your program, for instance, to give me many topics. I base my show on doing topics. I don't do topics like sex with men over 90. I'll do topics like, is glasnost really working? The Reagan administration, has it failed? I'll do topics that the American people previously have not really been privy to unless they've been listening to an extremely intelligent Ted Koppel or an extremely babbling Bill Buckley.
That may be the most alarming compliment I think I've ever gotten, but thank you anyway. Bill, you wanted to jump in there for a second?
There are other topics that Mort does that I don't think Nightline does, such as recreating the Jennifer Levin murder episode. And he did a show recently about male dating practices.
No, but you see, I guess we're both, maybe all three of us are missing the point, and maybe I need to focus attention on this just a little bit more. Give me one more chance. You consider yours to be a news program, Mort?
I consider mine to be a news program. Yes, there is an element of entertainment in it. I certainly hope so. And indeed, your program itself can be tabloid television. If we're to listen to Mr. Carter, I'm sure one of your biggest ratings were when you had Jim and Tammy Baker on. Let's face it, they aren't riveting news in this country.
Well, in a sense, they were, and without comparing Nightline to the New York Times, we can also say that the New York Times was covering televangelism, and so was the National Enquirer. That doesn't make one newspaper like the other.
Mm-hmm. Nor does everyone read the New York Times. A lot of people read the Post and read the Daily News and read the tabloids.
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get another perspective on tabloid TV from a man who makes his living advising client television stations on what syndicated programs to buy and put on the air. John Gluck of NMT Sales Incorporated. John Gluck, who is with us now in our New York studios, is Corporate Vice President for Programming at NMT Sales Incorporated, a firm which advises some 60 independent and network-affiliated television stations throughout the country on what would be good programming for their markets. And the kind of programming that we saw at the top of this broadcast is clearly doing well these days, correct?
Yes, it certainly is. There has been a revolution in the first-run syndication business, and that revolution is reality programming. And really, the television rating systems, Ted, is a very democratic institution. People, in essence, vote at what they like. And it's quite clear that they're voting in favor of first-run reality-based programming, whether it be Oprah Winfrey, Donahue, Geraldo, Morton Downey, or A Current Affair.
Let me ask you a question. If Morton Downey on his program were the quiet, thoughtful fellow that he's been here this evening, would that sell?
Would it attract viewers?
Yeah.
No, I don't think it would attract as many viewers as it does now. I think the excitement of the show is what attracts viewers.
So there has to be a certain shtick. There has to be a certain appeal that goes beyond the subject matter.
That's correct.
Now, what is the common thread, then, among the... I mean, give me a list of some of these programs. Which would you put into that category right now? You've mentioned Geraldo, you've mentioned Morton Downey.
Geraldo, Morton Downey, Oprah, Phil Donahue, even the People's Court, some of the new shows coming out next year, Group 1 Medical you mentioned, Family Medical Center. All of these shows fall into this reality genre. Some of the other court shows, like the Judge and Divorce Court and Superior Court, the same thing.
And what, to pose the same question that I posed to Morton Downey and to Bill Carter, what is it that these programs are driving out? Every new program that comes on is replacing one that wasn't there before, unless it appears on some cable channel that didn't have a program at that time period. What's losing if these programs are winning?
Some of the half-hour sitcoms are losing, the half-hour sitcom reruns in syndication. Some of the hour action adventures are losing. In most cases, most network affiliates in the early fringe, that is to say the afternoon time periods between 4 and 6 Eastern Time, are running either talk shows such as Oprah or Phil Donahue or court shows. But the main common ingredient is that they are all reality-based.
When you are dealing with clients, do these clients care at all about, and I don't mean to get too highfalutin here, but do they care at all about quality, or is all they care about, is this going to get ratings, and am I therefore going to make money?
Well, quite frankly, they care very much about getting ratings and augmenting revenues. But on the other hand, I think that there are very few stations that would put, let's say, the Morton Downey show on at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Most of Morton Downey's clearances are either in prime time or late night.
Because it's an adult program?
Correct.
Morton Downey, again, when you go out, and I mean, do you personally ever flog your own program? Do you sell it, or do you have people who do that for you?
No, Ted, when I appear at conventions, I'm always there, obviously, to shake hands and to let them meet Morton Downey, to see that Morton Downey isn't Attila the Hun. But that's really handled by MCA TV Distributors.
Why do you want to do that? They're buying Attila the Hun, aren't they?
I don't think so. I think they're buying someone who is straightforward, tries to be completely honest, and maybe a guy who looks like he's a little off the wall once in a while.
Now, you are clearly, I mean, you are so much in control this evening, and I've seen you before, and in fact, folks on this program who talked to you before and who talked to people who know you say that you are clearly a very thoughtful, intelligent fellow, so you have to psych yourself up to do this every night. Is that something that troubles you? You have a serious background. I mean, you feel like a bit of an idiot doing it sometimes?
No, I think anyone in this country who's been raised in an Irish family, a Jewish family, a Hispanic family, or an Italian family has been raised around yelling and confrontation and get up there, you know, and we're used to it. It's not something foreign to us, and that really represents about 50% of the people in this country, Ted, so it's not foreign to me.
All right, let's take a break, and we'll have a chance to continue our conversation when we come back in a moment. Once again with our guests, I want to pose the first question to Bill Carter. Most of my colleagues, certainly at the network level, have been in the business for 10, 15, 20 years. They have learned how to be journalists, and when they finally appear at the network, they bring certain standards to bear. I understand that the public at large sometimes hates us for what we do, but believe it or not, there are certain standards. Is there a danger that there becomes a confusion in the public mind between what I will call a legitimate news show and an entertainment news show?
Well, that, of course, is the danger. I mean, I think making an allusion to a movie, as Mr. Downey did with Network, although that was supposed to be a cautionary tale, which I think he sort of missed the point of. But in the movie Broadcast News, the Albert Brooks character says, you know, bit by bit, when we make these compromises, we lower our standards. And I think we see bit by bit, as these shows kind of proliferate, there's a danger that the standards are lowered everywhere, and that legitimate journalists find it harder and harder to do their jobs because they won't do it in a circus or carnival-like atmosphere, and they won't get as much attention for it.
Mort, accepting your point that there is an appetite for your kind of program, that's self-evident. You've lived in this town, you've worked in this town, you know what I'm talking about. There is a difference in the kind of journalism that some people do at the networks and the kind of journalism that you're involved in right now. Honest now. Any concerns about that?
No, none, Ted, simply because I'm not a journalist, all right? I am out there, as I said, again, an advocate. I also believe if you put too much starch in your shirt, it starts to chafe your neck. I don't let a lot of starch in my shirt. I wear a loose collar, and I just go with experience. I haven't spent 20 years in television or in radio. Most of my time has been out on the street, down in the gutter, or up on the hill. And I have lived life and seen the story. I haven't been the story.
Just one other question. How much further can it go? I mean, you know, people will watch almost anything that you put on if it's lurid enough, and it can get a lot more lurid than it has.
I think Paddy Chayefsky, some time ago when he wrote that movie, probably wondered the same thing, if it would ever go as far as he portrayed in the film. Indeed, it has gotten almost that far. I hope certainly that no one ever goes insane and shows themselves to be a complete maniac on television.
Thank you, gentlemen, all of you. The topic on This Week with David Brinkley on Sunday will be the Pentagon scandal. The guests include former Defense Secretary Caspar Weinberger. That's our report for tonight. I'm Ted Koppel in Washington. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
This has been Nightline. For a printed transcript, please send $3 to 267 Broadway, New York, New York, 10007. Nightline is a presentation of ABC News.